Hello, this is Cryptolyze. I hope you are well. This Friday, 24, November 2023. We meet today to talk about CFX, Conflux's crypto. As usual, we will divide this video into two parts. A fundamental part, we will come back to what Conflux is, to the role of CFX in Conflux, and then we will project ourselves onto the charts for purchase and sale price targets, short, medium, long term, and that begins right away. As a reminder, you always have the possibility of having free access to the educational course, which is a 60-hour training worth €400, which allows you to learn blockchain, crypto, investment, analysis technique, trading, everything to become profitable. Through 130 videos, 400 pages of guides, quizzes, to find out where you are in your progress and all for free. To have access to this lifelong training, simply use the platform of one of our partners. Everything is explained in the comments and descriptions. What is Conflux? Conflux is a level 1 blockchain, which means that it is an infrastructure blockchain which aims to provide developers with tools to be able to build decentralized applications. It's really a tool for developers to be able to build. The particularity of Conflux is that it is a blockchain which is Chinese. It was called for a while the Chinese Ethereum. It is not for nothing because it was in proof of work. And recently, in fact, they moved into a hybrid proof of work / proof of stake model. We will discuss it a little later. What characterizes Conflux? Well, it's a blockchain which is interoperable in any case, which has the basis of interoperability. So on that point, we're just being careful. It's not real interoperability, it's just that they have integrated a set of bridges which allow interoperable transactions on certain blockchains which are supported by Conflux. We are in something that is secured by Proof F Orc with Proof F Take. Now we see that afterwards. And they have a system that's pretty good, called the tree graph. So overall, they called it something else tree graph to make this image, which is the representation of the tree in which we will have a set of blocks which are validated simultaneously and which allow us to have a set of transactions which are fast, scalable, but we are still really something which can resemble a derivative of the hash graph, and we are in a technology which is interesting, but all in all, we arrive at levels of scalability which are still quite low compared to what we are already seeing now on certain blockchains. So they went from Proof F Orc to Proof F Orc / Proof F Take hybrid. For what? Already for several things, it is that they realized that they were still relatively vulnerable to a 51 attack, which would allow the person to be able to make a double expenditure. As a reminder of the 51 attack when one is in Proof F Orc, we must have 51 of the computing power to be sure of being able to have the longest chain, and therefore be able to validate these transactions and validate false transactions without the rest of the network, in any case, noticing it right away. And that would have a very, very strong impact on the survival of Conflux. And that's why they decided to do proof of work plus proof of stake to actually increase the risk if the person is ever required to do it. Concretely behind it, we have the CFX token, which serves as transaction fees, which serves as governance, and now as staking. So what's interesting is that the CFX is used for two things primarily and generated for two things that the inflationist says. One, necessarily pay transaction fees, mining fees, to miners, so which has a certain cost. This is normal because it is mined on the GPU, so it is a cost which is still quite significant. And on the side we have the inflation which is linked to the stakers, therefore to those who protect the network by staking their CFX. So that's why we don't have a maximum offer here, because we are in something that is inflationary. And we are on a diluted market cap of $750 million, which is relatively important when we start to lean a little. On the ecosystem where in TVL we don't have much, we have 21 million stakes, which is really nothing for a blockchain which is valued all the same, $750 million, in which we have an ecosystem which is quite weak, quite few applications, with quite little volume and quite little TVL too. Despite the fact that we have some arbitrage opportunities on Conflux, you should know that you are exposed to the risks linked to the different protocols. So is it really worth going? Looking for these arbitrage opportunities? That's up to you to determine, but personally, I wouldn't take the chance on 345 for more than what can be found on other networks. Besides, we will ask ourselves the question, is Conflux often developed? Are there any developers? Do we have things moving? But we still have quite a few commits. We have had an increase in commits in recent months, so which is rather positive. The commits being the Number of times where developers push code directly into Git, which is where the public code is stored, so which is rather positive. On the other hand, we still have quite few developers. We see that we revolves around 5-6 developers mainly, and in the high periods we will be in around 20 developers, and we see that we are really in this low period. So there it is more or less logical when we also see the TVL, which is relatively in GT, and flat. So for me, we have a blockchain which is interesting, which continues to develop. We have a concept of proof F ale, proof F orc mix, which is interesting. Is he the only one to do this? No. We have the notion of tree graph, which allows us to validate blocks in a particular way. Is it that efficient? I want to tell you no. In this case, we already have better in certain blockchains. So on that point, it's up to you. Do you think that eventually it will be a blockchain that will explode? Please note that it is a blockchain that still has a lot of partnerships in China, and we will see this in the graph. As soon as there is news at the CFX level, we have a valuation, which is relatively very important, despite the fact that we do not have our own use, at least in the public domain in which we could generate costs at the CFX level. So we are going to attack the technical part in which you will see it is quite simple, in which we have a very strong dilution with a very, very strong bearish breakout at the end of 2021, and we see that they did not bull run on the second part of 2021. For several reasons, it is that we had very few announcements, very little information, and above all, no decentralized application. So we had no valuation, no incentive. That's why we didn't do a new ATH, and that we sank because we had dilution behind us. Understand that when we have an inflationary blockchain like that without TVL behind it, and without decentralized applications, inevitably there will be a dilution, which will be very, very strong and very hard, in fact, to manage, especially since we have had very little news and very little of interest around this blockchain throughout this bear market period. And then we had an explosion at the beginning of January 2023 with a set of news, particularly on partnerships in China, which have arrived. Don't forget that we is on a blockchain which is in partnership with the government of Shanghai, with the Chinese government. So that means that we have an interest from the government in a blockchain, something which is still relatively rare. But is this of any interest to ordinary users? I'm not necessarily sure. In any case, what is sure and certain is that we had a very big acceleration thanks to this news, with 2 enormous candles which went here to liquidate all these people, who were mostly in shorts and who accompanied the course. Hence the fact that we had here these candles which were completely reworked with a wick which was completely reworked. And we had a first sign of a break of structure, which is interesting. That technically it is a first sign. After that, it remains a first sign because it is a form of induction. It implies that it is an upward acceleration which left liquidity, which was sought by the course. And if we really want a key level, it will really be the 0.85, which will be this top of wick in which we will look for a break at the level of the 1, and there at that moment, in fact, at the level of conflux, we will have a real break of structure. In the meantime, we are in a form of retracement. We had here a form of retest that we had given with the liquidity gain and the bearish continuity, so which was also a very good trade that we had accompanied. So here we are in a process where we can ask ourselves the question, are we in an interesting loan to expose ourselves to CFX? So there, the CFX, you have to understand that there, we had an upward acceleration which is linked to these last few days, but it remains in GT, relatively weak, okay? We didn't go looking here. The 0.20, we didn't go looking for liquidity here. We didn't consolidate above, so there, for me, we are rather even in something that is relatively bearish, with a ROTS which would be quite low, which would be precisely in the 0.85 or even a little lower. Go and get the 0.47 in which we have an order block which is there. We still have a part of the imbalance that remains to be filled between the 0.10 and... Here, hop, we are positioning ourselves the 0.7, 0.75. So there we have an interest in price to seek out this zone to potentially consolidate on it. And there we could indeed have an acceleration too. We will have to look at whether we have an accumulation. Do we have break F structures? The advantage of having done this high, that means that we now have a top here to break, okay? If we ever retrace here, make an accumulation and break this top, there we will have a signal which will be rather bullish, okay? If we don't have that, that means we're going to break, we're going to look here, and potentially re-accelerate the rise. And there we will have an interest. So for me, CFX, we are still relatively far from something which has shown signs of strength. We are not in a form of lateralization yet. We are in a form of breathing following a big acceleration, and there is no upward momentum yet in place. In terms of target, then it's a bit complicated because we have an ecosystem which is almost empty. We don't have a total value log, so that means we don't have any interest shown in the network, despite the fact that there are partnerships that are set up so we have very little volume on the network, so it is complicated to be able to plan. In any case, what is certain is that the first price that you must have in mind here will be the 0.48. So we could even symbolize by the 0.50, go get this top there, which is the top of the news, in which here we could have a wave 1, wave 2 approach and make a wave 3 with a bullish acceleration behind it to get this part. And I think that the ones will be a very good price initially. Are we going to do an ATH? This, the new ATH, will be determined by the world that will be on conflux, the interest that will be around this blockchain, the applications that will be built on top of it. In any case, during a next bull run, we will have a valuation of the CFX. The question will rather be in the notion of your risk management, how you will manage profit-taking as it rises, so as to be able to protect yourself from a reversal, which could be quite abrupt if the speculation ever stops. I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It supports the channel. It always makes me happy. And we'll see you tomorrow. 13:30 for the weekly. And don't forget that there is a live to celebrate the 2 years, Sunday 26 November at 20 on YouTube. And I'll see you soon.